Tara Kartha, a distinguished fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, New Delhi, explains the diplomatic stand taken by India in the Ukraine war through a comprehensive study which was projected in the print. I'm Anjana, and let's know what she wants us to know about India standing aloof from the Ukraine issue. Delhi has received a torrent of disguised warnings and pleas in recent months, particularly last week, as leaders from all major European countries and United States arrived in India to urge its support in the Ukraine war. While tensions have subsided as Delhi has maintained its public stance, now is a good time to clarify India's position on Ukraine, not in terms of justification, but in terms of clarity on where we stand and where we are going to move in the coming months. This also entails evaluating some of the experts' most prized theories and hypotheses, such as demands for Indian mediation or warnings that India's weak stance will lead to China intervening. To begin with, India's status has never been stable. As the war progressed, India's permanent representative continued to abstain from resolutions condemning Russia, but refused to endorse an opportunistic Russian proposal. In the early stages of the conflict, Delhi undeniably required Russian and Ukrainian assistance to evacuate its 22,000 citizens, including those from 18 other countries, and as a result, in February, it adopted a stance that emphasized dialogue and diplomacy, as well as Prime Minister Narendra Modi's talks with both sides. That situation persisted until the last aircraft returned in 24th of March. India had abstained on a Russian resolution that strangely called for civilian protection in Ukraine and unhindered humanitarian access, while also emphasizing that the matter should not be politicized. India again abstained on a vote to expel Russia from the Human Rights Council on April 7, this time opting to condemn the Bucha massacre and demand an impartial investigation. As a result, India's vote was balanced with a focus on respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states and peaceful resolution of international conflicts. This has led many to believe that India and China are on the same page. While Beijing's explanation of the vote checked both boxes, the rest of the statement focused on history and abandoning the Cold War mentality, abandoning the logic of ensuring one's own security at the expense of others, and abandoning the approach of seeking regional security by expanding military blocs. To put it in another way, the two positions have nothing in common in terms of abstaining. India's attitude is unlikely to change in the future. Few recall that India also abstained on US-sponsored Resolution 688, which served as a prelude to the invasion of Iraq, at a time when India was sure that Iraq possessed no weapons of mass destruction. Similar resolutions were also passed on Bosnia and Libya, both of which foreshadowed operations that resulted in long-running civil wars in both nations. Following the abstention, some have called for India to mediate, citing its proximity to Russia as a reason. There are a few requirements that must be completed before mediation can be considered. Mediation is a procedure whereby a third person supports two or more parties with their consent in preventing, managing, or resolving a conflict by assisting them in developing mutually acceptable solutions, according to a UN guidance paper. In other words, the consent of all those involved is critical, not just one. Assuming that Russia is ready for mediation, presumably because its most immediate needs of liberating Donbas have been met, and that Ukraine is also willing to offer neutrality with strong guarantees, which means a virtual security umbrella from some NATO countries, both of these scenarios provide scope for mediation. There is, however, a third party that encompasses both Europe and the United States. There is currently no sign that either party is willing to support such a result. President of the European Union, Frans Timmermans, recently indicated that sanctions were intended to be used as leverage for a long-term peace. Recently, US President Joe Biden urged Congress for $33 billion in funding for Ukraine, with $20 billion earmarked for weapons. Such a measure does not appear to indicate a desire to end the war. What it does demonstrate is that the United States defense sector is reaping the benefits. Yes, mediation is critical, particularly for those countries suffering with economic shocks, such as India. However, no serious mediator will intervene if it appears that one side wants to ride Russia into the sunset. Several experts have cautioned that if India maintains its current stance, China may launch a similar invasion along the lines of Ukraine, particularly in disputed territories. First and foremost, it must be made plain that any large-scale invasion along the lines of the Russian incursion would be opposed by India with not only equal force but also the threat of nuclear weapons. India has a no first use policy which is more than just a declaration. It also affects the amount and types of weapons it keeps in its arsenal. However, any real danger to its territorial integrity, which is after all a core requirement of national security, is likely to be handled with the use of nuclear weapons if conventional forces fail. What is obviously a lot more frightening and far more plausible is the continuous slicing away of territory that may not be considered significant enough to justify the deployment of nuclear weapons. For this and other reasons, India may wish to issue an official and public policy that establishes red lines, which if broken, may result in extreme response, nuclear or otherwise. While it is expected that China would not risk such an escalation, it is also important to guarantee that any potential adventurism by regional commanders is successfully dealt with immediately, even before it is considered. So what are the signs of eventual fate? For all of the reasons that have been publicly articulated, including weapons dependency, the necessity to prop up Moscow as a third pole of tolerable strength, and the fact that Russia is involved in our most sensitive fields, including nuclear power, India is likely to remain the course. Any form of historical hangover of Russian friendliness is no longer relevant. Diplomacy today requires a level of adaptability that cannot be based on past successes or sentiment. Consider Indian diplomacy to be similar to Indian driving. Any lane at any time as long as it takes you to your destination quickly. That's what Tara Kartha says. This is Anjana signing off. Do like and share this video. For further updates, subscribe to Kaumudy Global.